I want to kick off anyway with an exchange that I had with a YouTube user who I will not name. See if this generates any interest and inspires people to contact us to call in. I received this message from someone, and as I say, I'm not going to say who it was, but alarm bells started ringing immediately because it was a very lengthy message and it had sporadic capital letters all over the place, and I just thought, no, this is a loon. I've cut down his comment as much as I can, but it starts this way. I'm sorry. Old age is a terrible thing. You'll have to excuse me whilst I change my glasses. He says, I have a question for you. You obviously do not believe in God, so I was wondering if you could help me with something I have been wondering. Since life had to begin by chance, from non-living material, I would like you to give me this is where the capitals started off, specific example of a living organism created, and again, random capitals, entirely from non-living material in a lab, controlled environment, etc. He goes on a little bit more, but that was the gist of it. It was a very angry sort of like message. I demand evidence for this. And basically, if you can't prove it, then I win by default. So I responded. I thought, I can't be bothered with it. I responded in these terms. I said, hello, in the late 70s, Professor Francis Urquhart and his team working at Bristol University using a saline solution containing a high concentration of OH plus radicals, got no idea, this is all absolute bullshit, produced a self-replicating molecule. And he had said in his original message, he said, name the specific organism. So I gave him a name. I said, they called it Henry after the professor's dog, but the technical name was BBFU27. Their results were published in Nature, although I don't have a specific reference. Due to funding cuts, Professor Urquhart's work stopped in the early 80s, and as far as I understand, Henry is stored in a refrigerator in Solihull, which probably wouldn't actually make you giggle unless you knew Solihull. He failed to notice that I'd named this Professor Francis Urquhart, the initials of which are obviously FU. But he responded. He says, well, I guess I was wrong when I said, I assume you understand the difference between genetic splicing, genetic engineering, and other. What you are describing is genetic engineering. What I'm interested in is the creation of a saline solution created entirely from non-living material. Can you believe it? I'm just taking a section of it. It does go on. So I responded, saline solution produced naturally. When did you last take a dip in the sea? 70 to 80% of the Earth's surface is covered with a saline solution. You do know what a saline solution is, do you? The response was even angrier. Wow! Apparently you still believe salt water is a living organism. Hang on, have I slipped a page? I thought, hang on. No, I haven't. And so it goes, sorry to disappoint you, but no, and he asked for further examples. So eventually I got so bored with him, I started sending him random papers from PubMed that had a very loose connection with abiogenesis. And basically I couldn't even understand the title of many of these papers, let alone the abstract. It might as well have been written in Chinese. After I'd sent the first link, he responded, I'm not interested in a video, a theory or blog, or capital letters again. Give me specific details, blah, blah, blah. And so I sent him a few more, because I could see it was really irritating. So I sent him a few more PubMed links. My point is this, is this not illustrative of the fact that people, two things. Firstly, they're not actually interested in anything, any response they get. He didn't even click on the PubMed link. He thought it was a video link. And secondly, it's this sort of attitude that they assume that if science or an atheist cannot explain a particular area, such as abiogenesis or a full explanation of the Big Bang and the like, they seem to think that they win by default. That's what I want to kick off with. concordance.
You know, you actually almost hit on something kind of cool. And since I'm the resident science geek on this particular panel, I feel I should point out that you were pretty doggone close by accident, which is not hydroxyl radicals, but there are autocatalytic.
Alcohol, isn't it?
Well, no, it's hydroxyl.
Most of the alcoholic things have an OH bit stuck on the end.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll shut up. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I was just saying that there are autocatalytic RNAs, and that's been around a long time. So you take an RNA precursor, and you have to set the stage. You have to put the RNAs in, but then once they're in, they cleave themselves. They cut themselves to a specific shape, and that shape is itself a sort of template for other shapes. So the RNAs, and RNAs are something that are found in nature, right? They're of course in all our cells, but they're also found in, comets and random mixtures of chemicals. You will find RNA. The RNAs themselves are self-catalytic. They make more of themselves. So it's not too much of a stretch from what we know of chemistry and what we think of the prebiotic world that there very well could have been RNAs which started making more of themselves from just sort of random junk lying around. It would be an incredible thing. I mean, it's something that's very difficult to observe, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility. What fundamentally, I think we'll probably hit this point a lot of times today, is the difference between unexplained and unexplainable. Right? Magic is unexplainable. It's anytime you're talking about, well, you can't know. You can't know how this is done. That's no longer interesting to science. It's not something that science can talk about, but it's not terribly interesting if you can't develop a model, if you can't come up with a mechanism, if it's something that you can never reach the end of. You're just not going to get a lot of scientists very interesting, although it would keep the grant cycle running.
He did mention RNA in one of his responses, which began, "Wow, I guess you really are that ignorant." Such light dialogue.
Well, he's not trying to convince you of anything. He just wants to thump his chest and feel better.
Yeah, he went on, "Let me explain to you very slowly so you will get it this time." I mean, God damn it. It's extraordinary. Sorry, change your glasses again. I asked for an example of a living organism, not a molecule being created out of non-living material. Instead, you attempted to pass off a molecule in a saline solution. He still didn't, anyway, that can replicate itself as a living organism. Here we go with the capitals again. Are you serious? WFTF is wrong with you! Exclamation, question, exclamation, so on. RNA can replicate itself, and scientists have had some success in creating RNA from amino acids and blah, blah, blah. However, that is not a living organism. A living organism has a cell, it shows growth, it displays metabolism, it displays homeostasis, and it responds to stimuli, and it can reproduce, which I kind of guess is not a bad definition of life. But what's the position so far as our understanding of the likely process of abiogenesis to how that then led on to single-celled organisms?
So once you have, let's say, high-fidelity replication, in other words, you have generations going on and you have information starting to be passed, or you have a pattern that is self-replicating, at that point, everything else is almost a triviality. The fact that you get lipids that automatically form micelles, that you have enough of this hydrophobic goo together in a aqueous environment, it just naturally forms droplets. In the same process, you take some a bubble mix and blow air through it, and you're going to get bubbles every time. There's no magic to that. It's a chemical property of lipids. So you get nucleic acids, you get lipid coating, and then everything sort of snowballs from there. The lipid micelles that contain certain other components or certain nutrients are obviously going to end up replicating more often. And those micelles are constantly being broken up. So pretty soon you have a sort of a cell division. But it really is all about that first kickstart, that first high fidelity replication. Once that happens, there's really no going back. Now, the reason we don't see this happening every day is because if you have nutrients, things like RNA and lipids, sitting around in the sun or in the ocean, something's going to eat them. You know, if we had these isolated locations, it is still possible where this process, if we had a couple million years, could occur again. There's nothing barring it from happening except for the presence of all the life that's already here that eats all those nutrients, that prevents them from forming again.
Michael, can I come to you? Because I must explain. Michael, again, kindly stood in at the last moment, but he does have to leave us on the hour, so about 40 minutes or so. So if you've got a question specifically for Michael, you better get in quick. But thank you for joining us, Michael. On the more general question, what are your comments about this, what appears to be these people's attitudes that if you can't explain it, I win by default?
Yeah, I think it's a general structure that all theological arguments, with the exception of the ontological argument, make. That is, that they create a malformed question or a problem, assume that a theistic intervention can explain it or predict it in some way, and then simply declare victory because the intricacies of a natural explanation are not there yet. So it seems basically it's kind of cheating in a way, and I think that's why I don't find any theistic arguments.
But it's not even cheating, Michael. It's just plain wrong. I don't understand how they can say it with a straight face.
Well, they've elevated the argument from ignorance to an art form, an entire philosophical branch of we don't know, therefore supernatural. And it's not just religion. It's ESP. It's proof by lack of convincing alternative, and not universally convincing, but personally not convincing.
You'll notice even in someone like William Lane Craig, who purports to be a philosopher, the very first thing he said, which I always clued in on when I met him, almost instantly, was that he sets his burden of proof as being the best explanation, which instantly sets the burden as being, if I can have an explanation that's more simple, and you don't, then I win. And all of his arguments essentially are coming back to creating a problem that cannot be easily or simply answered. Because, then under that rubric, he does have the simplest explanation, but it's categorically, you can argue, just not an explanation at all. And this
can I just pause you there very quickly? I've had a number of contract requests. I don't know how I can spell it out more clearly or how many times I have to say it. If you are going to send a contract request, please include, there's a box there for you to fill in gist of what you want to talk about or the question you want to ask. I am ignoring the contact request from SWAT 1913 for that reason. I'm ignoring the contact request from Perpetual Entropy for that reason. Send another one with that information in, and we'll accept you. I'm sorry, Michael. Do carry on.
Yeah, it's an argument that you can actually develop a bit more fully when you understand what explanations usually mean within a scientific or philosophical context. Normally, to explain something means to have some sort of non-repetitive or inarbitrary justification that makes use of other pieces of knowledge which are either simpler than the question being asked or at least known and justified themselves. So you can't actually explain something you don't know with something else you don't know. And that's essentially the problem with theistic arguments.
Isn't it not even more simplistic than that? That they're just relying on a gap in knowledge. It's a god of the gaps, isn't it? Which is
it is, but the the point I would like to make is that this doesn't even fill the gaps. I mean, it's just creating other gaps.
Well, it creates not only other gaps, it creates a lot more problems for them. They think that by instigating this God character, they're going to answer a question, but I've never ever understood how they can actually think that. Because the creation of the God character raises so many more questions, and it still doesn't get over the question, okay, well, if it was God that set everything into motion with the Big Bang, then how did he do it? It's just an extra layer that is unhelpful.
I genuinely think they don't actually believe that they have good arguments.
Do you think they're being dishonest?
I think it's a case of motivated reasoning. I think usually religious explanations do take this weird form, and you can see this. I wanted to do a video actually on this, was just how different explanations are in the natural world versus religious or spiritual thinking, which take on a whole different burden of proof. And you actually see even in tribal cultures or in religious people's thinking that they apply very different sets of standards between one set of phenomenon to another set of phenomena. And once a spiritual dimension can be applied to a set of phenomena, then even the meaning of the word explanation takes on a whole new form, and one that I think is pretty incoherent. It's something I do want to expand on further. I just need to get the time to actually make a video one of these days.
Concordance.